Calvin and Hobbes. Probably the only remnant of my childhood that wasn't tainted by modern remakes or factory-produced character goods. And it turns out this was an artistic decision made by the cartoonist himself, who was adamant against turning his art into a licensed product. And special thanks to the guy who mentioned Bill Watterson in the comments. And I remember getting this way back in the year of 2000, this book, while I was still in elementary school. And the cartoon itself, I believe, came out in the year of 1985. But this is such a classic that it still puts a smile on my face whenever I open this up and read some of the comic strips, even to this day. And interestingly, I probably comprehend it even more now that I am older and more experienced now. And I actually don't know how I've enjoyed this back in the day when I was a kid. Because, the lines and the ideas inside this comic strip, they contain a lot of seriously sophisticated ideas and words, right? It's so imaginative. And maybe back in the day when I was younger, I enjoyed looking at the pictures more than understanding the words and, the lines that Calvin and Hobbes had. And when we're kids, we all love the main character, right? We have this admiration and respect towards the hero with special powers and enormous strength. Or we also have the sympathetic feeling towards an adorable, cute character, just like how almost everyone loves Pokemon, right? But the way I fell in love with Calvin and Hobbes, the characters, it was kind of a different story, right? So Calvin was more realistic in a way, and he is relatable, that created this special, unique bond. And because this 6-year-old unapologetic, mischievous boy lived in his own world and didn't give two shits about anything that happened around him other than his own imagination, I think this was the biggest appeal for me, because this exceptional bravery and courage shown by this little young boy somehow gave me the energy to push on and live my life. I think, I didn't really have this philosophical idea back in the day, but maybe it kind of gave me this internal motivation to push forward without caring too much about what people around me think about me. And I guess I kind of got that from Calvin himself. And in this story, he was an adventurer. He was a space agent. He was a dinosaur. He was an alligator living in the Amazonian River. He was best friends with a tiger named Hobbes, right? So in his own world, he was living this perfect, imaginative life. But in the eyes of Calvin's parents and his teachers, he was someone different, right? He was perceived to be this problem child. He was a nuisance, a psychotic kid who was out of control all the time, a weirdo in his school, and a lonely boy who only plays with a tiger doll. So they all live in the same world, but the way they experience life is so drastically different that it's so relatable as a kid. It's so relatable to a kid who understands how frustrating it is for grown-ups that just don't get it, right? And in the book, there's this small episode where Calvin is pouring cereal into a bowl. Let me actually find it and show it to you. So he is pouring cereal into a bowl, and he finds a decoder ring. Here it is. And this is what he says. Wow, we can send each other secret messages in code now. We have the decoder ring. And, he smirks with Hobbes and he says, haha, now mom and dad won't be able to tell. They won't be able to understand us at all. And after a short silence, Calvin says, not that they do anyway. So, this is kind of the style that this cartoon goes for. And, it's very short, but it's very witty at the same time. And it kind of feels very realistic, but funny and humorous in a way. So I guess that's what made it so relatable to me as a kid. And there's another one that I also remember. This one actually has no speech inside. There are no lines. So there are no speech bubbles, but here it is. So here's another episode that's speechless, but it's very simple and elegant. It kind of shows you what kind of character Calvin is and what kind of relationship he has with his mom. And, this kind of thing. Just, it's very simple, very elegant, and it kind of gives you that warm feeling, I guess. Even though no one in this world understands Calvin, he's just having the best time of his life, and he's doing whatever he can to enjoy his life and fulfill his dreams. And I guess this imaginative world is what makes this cartoon strip so appealing in a way. And the fact that Bill Watterson, the cartoonist, was strictly against licensing his characters is probably what made me keep this raggedy copy within arm's reach for all these years, and maybe for many more years to come, as long as the sheets hold intact, as long as they remain intact. And if you think about this, what he protected, what Bill Watterson protected, was not only his art, but also the soul of a 6-year-old child's imagination, right? His endless imagination. And that's something more than just a feeling of nostalgia. It's a piece of childhood that never had to grow up. There's some kind of pure innocence that was preserved. And this makes it so valuable in a world like the one that we are living in today, right? Because, of course, no one really cares too much about this type of thing in a profit-driven world where numbers speak louder than meaning. But what is hopeful is that this story will live on. The characters will continue to live on. And there will always be those who draw inspiration from this type of thing. Just like how Calvin's best friend will always be Hobbes, even when everyone tells him Hobbes is just a doll, right? But as long as he keeps imagining, as long as he keeps dreaming, there's nobody that can tell Calvin that he's delusional.